So I've been having some issues with my 2002 Chevy S10 where the SRS light, aka the airbag light, continues to fluctuate on and off depending on the time of day and how I'm driving and if the engine's warm. And it seems somewhat random, and it works about 70% of the time where it keeps the light off, but that other 30% is somewhat alarming. So after some diagnosis, you'll see that this light stays on, and that's a bit of a pain. So there's a few places to check if you do end up seeing your SRS light on. So one of the first places you'll want to check is you want to take your air box out. You want to check this ground, which comes up and into the wiring right under the fuse box. So there's a ground right there, and then there's another ground right below it. And generally they're pretty crusty and old, and sometimes people have grounding issues with them. So you can take your multimeter and put the leads on that, and then put that onto some other piece of exposed metal on the engine and determine that if it's actually properly grounding. The other main place that you'll want to look is at the yellow wires that come out right in front of the fuse box in this connector right here. So these are going to be actually be under this thick loom right here. They're going to be attached to the wheel well right here, so you'll need to slide them off. They have a connector right on the bottom right here that actually just slides off of the wheel well, and you can see the connector itself is right here. So once you slide that off, you can take it off and put it on top of this wheel well to do a little further diagnosis. So once you do that, you can reconnect everything, and the important wires to check are going to be the black and white wires in this top loom. I believe this top connector, I believe this bottom connector goes to the front diff sensor. So you'll see these two yellow wires, and within this loom I think there's also one black wire with a white stripe. So what this does is it actually goes down, and it goes under the truck into this, which is your front driver's side discriminating sensor. Now there are two yellows and two black with a white stripe on this side, and what that actually does is it runs back around and into this loom onto this sensor, which has one of those yellows and one of the blacks with a white stripe. So basically what you'll want to do is, it seems like these get fairly dirty and they end up shorting out or making a bad connection. So basically what ends up happening is there's nothing to pull the voltage down under the limit that the SRS module is looking for. Normally it'll sit at about 4.6 volts, and then everything's working properly, I think it'll sit around 2.3 volts. But if it's malfunctioning, then anything above, I think 3.3 or 3.5, then your airbag light comes on. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to pull this orange tab out, and then you'll want to depress this and pull the connector out, and then spray it with some brake clean and wipe it very thoroughly from the front and back and inside of the connector. And you'll want to do the same thing on this side. So the easiest way to actually diagnose if these front sensors and this whole front circuit is the issue is to look at the bottom of this connector and get these two outer pins right here. So these outer pins should be a yellow on the outermost side, and then a black with a white stripe in the middle, and then that will leave you with a voltage of 4.6 if it's malfunctioning. So again, we're going to want to look for something under 3.5 or under 3.3, and that will turn the light off. So after debugging this for quite some time and spraying this with a ton of brake clean and wiping it out, I found that it looks like this was the issue. So after I plug this back in, we should actually see that after we plug it back in, what you'll want to see is this drop. And I'm still trying to determine if it's an issue with the wiring itself, which will need to be replaced. But if I actually stick my hand under and wiggle the wires, you will see, and then you'll see after jiggling it around that I end up back at 2.4. But the thing is that I can move the wires around and it gets back to 4.6, and that enables the SRS light. So I'm just gonna have to do some cleanup and secure these wires in such a way that it keeps it at 2.4. And so I've got it stable at 2.39 and 2.40. And essentially what I've done so far, in order to ensure that these wires don't move, is I've just wrapped a zip tie around the sensor in order to keep the wires in place so that they don't move and jiggle around after cleaning, hopefully keeping it in place and keeping the wires where they have a good contact, good ground to the sensor. So now that we're at 2.4, you can head back around and you'll be able to see that the SRS light is now off, which is great. And so if you have any issues, just make sure to check those two sensors and check the voltage at that point right next to the fuse box. Thank you.